In 1939, the Again Set Penguin Books published 6 guides to different British counties, full in tourism maps, designed at the medium-class car owner. Emma Jen Kirby has been drive about the UK in such at first edition guides in her brush to see how Britain has modified with the begin of Planet War couple. Following halt, Cornwall. The sea is throw a hysterics present, crushing and fit versus the harbour side and flinging a malicious breeze up the sands and within the worn-out tire seals of my box. I'm meeting potable tea and consuming clotted cream Cornwall shortcake biscuits in my Newquay Inn chamber, leafing via my 1939 Penguin manual to Cornwall and smile at writer J.W. Lambert's frequently grumpy colour. He seemed to sense his shire was departure quite away kilter in the 1930s, and he surely wasn't a fan of Newquay. Newquay is anything but a feast refuge, he writes. A fat gull, inflated up versus the breeze sits on my sill and blinks at me reproachfully. I outdoor the box a slight and crush several of my clotted cream shortcake for it. The poultry peers brief at the dry bread and later fair looks up and stares at me. A sorrowful link of my manual pop music in my chief. Cornwall cream, love toddy, is not as nice as it was, a link to the Victorian-era satiric ammunition depot how lingered on before 2002. It might of year include been the imminent war how colored J.W. Lambert's worldview, but he surely emerging to sense how his favorite shire had already seen its top by 1939. Get his downbeat type on the fishery production and the decrease of how largest Cornwall of minnow, the sardine. Unfortunately the history of Cornwall fishery is fair as gloomy as its mountain, if not more than so. It is sadly real how, though, if pilchards were plentiful it would be hard to discover a marketplace for them. Lot British human beings do not love pilchards in any shape and it seems unbelievable how though the Cornwall could be convinced to eat rather so lot of them as they did. Newquay fishmonger Gareth Horner shakes his chief as he rakes the ice about 2 big crabs on his resist. I note how nearly all his make has the dark and white Cornwall banner following to it, indicating its origin, but down there's not a solitary sardine to be seen. Go behind in the summer and thou'll see human beings queuing for them to barbecue on the barbecue, he grins. Of year, we don't urge them pilchards any more than, we urge them Cornwall sardines, he's the identical minnow but he's all on sale. Horner, someone's the tertiary fishmonger in his household, tells me how in J.W. Lambert's date, following the decrease of the bonito trawlers, the regional fishery production did really get a fall. But 80 year on, he assures me, minnow stocks are convalescent and down there are lot of day boats departure out contagious minnow in crochet and link off the Cornwall shore. These days, he explains as he selects several Cornwall hack for a client, human beings' thoroughness on minnow preservation and wish to aware wherever and how their minnow is trapped. Cornwall is famous present as an epicure mecca for gourmand minnow lovers. In the 21st age, I propose, maybe minnow has replaced the similar pale thing how can be really terrible, our manual warns his readers, as the domestic meal. Cornwall has be a location named for its penalty meal, agrees Horner, take off his cell bonnet. Or the TV chefs Love Haystackstein and Keith Floyd include made a large job to contribute various varieties of minnow. Chefs are receive brave and are enterprising types of minnow how in 1939, not one would include looked at, love gurnards and triggerfish. He laughs. My grandpa would include fall above oneself if he could see which I'm marketing on the resist currently. As I driving east to the Rame Peninsula via a turmoil of snowing, my manual promise me a hot and wet environment, I sense certainly J.W. Lambert would happy to see minnow behind at the cardiac of the Cornwall sameness. I'm not at all certainly, although, how he would greet the tourists how the Cornwall mark attracts. Through the 1939 manual the writer deplores the inflow of holidaymakers and day trippers to his favorite shire, as he felt they were damaging its consistency. Following, Get the Way to King Sand, that, in its neighbor Cawsand, provides a magnificent type of Plymouth audio. The two villages are Plymouthian playgrounds and not so enjoyable as they were for the sightseeing guest, he writes. The savage sea has already deserted a little ship onto the grit at Cawsand, and it is now beating the rock, inquiring for more than remnant. In spite the corrosive breeze, I'm using walk circle the idyllic countryside of Cawsand in its tight, twisting gateway, its tail cottage and trinket beaches, all drenched in a magic wintry lighting. This issue is he's too idyllic, says Shire advisor George Truebody, smile acidly. All wants a bit of he. We ambling along downward the scenic Garrett Road, and in his gloved brush, he points to every frontline doorway. How is a other household, he tells me, how one too much. Following doorway is a feast allow, how one is a other household, the identical for how a. He counts them off on his fingers. Of the 63 houses there, just 29% are held all year circle, 36 are other homes, and 9 the otherwise, are feastlets. Cornwall thrives on travel, and ever has, though behind in the 1930s, but now we requirement to get the balance sheet law. We had to do thing or we would miss the society ever. The bet of other home property in the Rame Peninsular is amongst the highest in England. In London, buyers brought by the comparatively low prices as so as the nice sea installation. Next, the sample of St. Ives at the far end of the Shire, that has a such issue. 5 congregation councils on the peninsula include united forces on a neighborhood schedule. How insists all again constructed homes are sold out just as main residences. Truebody unlocks a padlock. How secures the doorway to a little house website. He tells me the is wherever an old torment of Nelson's, the 16th age-old vessel inn, stood up a flame burnt it downward in 2013. The justice plans to recover the bar as a kind of legacy museum, but upper floor, down there will be 5 or 6 apartments constructed for youthful families on affordable rents. He's not lot, but he's a begin, says Truebody. We requirement to try to hold families there to hold the initial high school and the shops stable all year circle. We requirement a complete time people to hold services sustainable in places love the, differently they fare be phantom villages. I go off the way to thaw at Saner's pub in Perranporth, household of the Cornwall Holy Saint Piran, lured by the pledge of several Cornwall national piece of music. I solve I win tea speak the musicians which our 1939 manual done of their city. Perranporth, if I say he's a 20th age sea feast city, how will be rather quite. It sadly becomes less than and less than appealing as it becomes more than and more than famous. The jam meeting is in complete swinging as I come, and I am amazed to see so lot youthful human beings amongst the players. In 1939, J. W. Lambert, who wrote heavily on Cornwall customs officer and observances, was already worried they were moribund of. They're greater rather than always, retorts Merv Davy, someone, as the large singer of Cornwall, the man loaded in supporting his shire's mores, is quite so placed to aware. We encounter at Nanstallen Initial High School close Bodmin, wherever David and his vigorous woman, Alison, are training the family conventional dances for a big festivity on St. Piran's date. The boys and girls are wild ecstatic on the skip, and Davy's banjo game, and are rather enthusiastic while he teaches them how to cry cold, in Cornwall. I can sense our 1939 manual making his top to character the desire. To several unclear cause, attempts are creature done to restore the use of the Cornwall tongue, that is rather appropriate for declaring how the pig is in the inland, but worthless for purchase a package of cigarettes. Confessedly, David can't procedure a package of cigarettes in Cornwall, same's a non-smoker, but joyfully, he can procedure ale. He tells me how in the 1930s down there was a boot behind versus option cultures, and how individual identities and Celt languages were afraid, seen as against establishment and in dispute in the UK Empire picture. Yet see at Cornwall civilization in the 21st age, he says majestically. We include a acceptance by the Europe Convention of the Cornwall human beings as a domestic minority group. We include our tongue recognized, and we include a degeneration transactions. Our trust in creature Cornwall is far more now rather than it would include been 80 year back. Of the mound over Polzeath, the Reverend Stephen Savage, and I gaze mistrustfully at a barefooted youthful man in a wetsuitable, his surfing hidden by his hand, who is header decisively seawards. The heat measuring device on my car toolbar informs us it is now 1C, 34F. Currently how's devotion, laughs the secretary contagious at his wide-rimmed dark hat up the breeze thievish it. Surf, the Cornwall desire, was a born kind of sports in 1939, and if our manual knew on it, he obviously didn't believe it would capture on length quite to order a refer. But he was confident on the stay force of Methodism in Cornwall. Methodism at first took conduct while the lamb were extraordinarily loose and starving and did a large transactions of nice. It yet has a powerful impact, he writes. Though meeting numbers include considerably omitted through the UK above the history 80 year, Cornwall is bucking the tendency in one honour. There a high quantity of human beings visit chapel rather than say they are members of it, while requested by pollsters. But he's undertaken rather a transformation to get down there onto Stephen Savage, who is the president of Cornwall's Methodists. We're hard to achieve human beings in our civilization wherever they are now, and not proverb thou ve got to fit in our form, he says. We are produced, in belief, to move out and do thing various. He's top hazard, but he's so worth. I see at him questioningly, go and include a C at tube station, and thou'll see which I indicate, he laughs. Tube station is the surfers' oratory at Polzeath, that for the 1 week operates as a coffee house. Mothers and toddlers groups use the area as a collection location. The Anthem Executive Board displays the Wi-Fi coding and strikingly, bottom the wood crucifix on the behind side wherever the sacrificial altar should be down there's a scooter footlights. 10 years back, the oratory had a miserable meeting of 8 human beings, present on banquet days such as Easter. It can boasting 300 to 500 human beings, lot of them youthful surfers. The secretary declines, on the event, to don a hat and execute a boot somersault. He is tiring a length dark overcoat and dog neck, but he is completely diamond how the chapel and its ministers must go in the times. I fair expect how in the next we can branches out and include more than places love the, he says. Or to recycling several of our old chapels for presence community to encounter the as necessary of human beings present. Reason thou, he adds, start to cackle, I'm not certainly yours 1939 manual would be so acute. This Cornwall chant really so, particularly in choirs and choruses, not in the lilting sorrow of the mountain, nor the derisive sorrow of the Irish, nor the quite painful shine of the Welsh. Their sweets is fuller tinted, their sorrow and their merriment less than active. The gull perks up a slight following the at first few stick of chant, and I try it once again in a few trimming of clotted cream shortcake. Following a few moments of difficult steadfast via the window, it acquiesces and begins to bite part-heartedly at the biscuit. Next day, if fishmonger Gareth Horner has all, I might consider the gull to a sardine.